Miss Makima. I really want to touch her boobs.
Gooned or groomed? Those are the most common questions when it comes to Chainsaw Man, and understandably so. The main character's main goal in life at first is simply boobs, but don't worry, because later it becomes sex. However, despite all of the blood and gore and sexual nature of a lot of the scenarios in Chainsaw Man, the underlying message of it is related to neither. Both are simply a part of the circumstances that Denji himself is in. Chainsaw Man is more so a tragedy about Denji, who seeks to know and live a normal life but has no concept of what it is. And because he has no concept of what it is, people keep manipulating him and dragging him along to do whatever they wish with. Anyways, let's get into it. So, concept and execution. Some stories have a great concept but fail to really execute on it in a meaningful way. Meanwhile, others have an okay concept, but the way they use it and the execution of it is absolutely brilliant. Chainsaw Man has both. It has a really cool base concept with how the world works and the powers and everything, and the execution is absolutely beautiful. It is a story that is unafraid to do whatever the hell it wants, and it truly shines at everything it tries its hand at. Whether it be weird and goofy, dark, gory, or even oddly wholesome at times. Let me go ahead and say that I have no real complaints here, and anything I do have a minor concern with only takes place in the manga, and which is part two is about to wrap up, and I have complete and utter faith in the author Tatsuki Fujimoto to deliver. And I know some people complain about part two and what happens in the manga, but it's not it's not valid. Trust me. Everything so far has been great. Anime, movie, manga. It's all so incredibly amazing. Now allow me to really shower this masterpiece with my praise. First and foremost, Denji, the main character. I love Denji. Something you really don't hear a lot about Chainsaw Man is how wholesome it can be at times, in spite of all the questionable things going on. And Denji, at heart, is really a good guy, and you do see that shine sometimes, but only the bad parts of him get encouraged. He's a good guy, he just never gets the chance to be in a good situation. He's been killing devils since he was just a child, because his dad died and he got left with all of his debt. And most days, all he ever got to eat was a slice of bread, which he shared with Pochita, the devil who he lives with. So most days, all he had was half a slice of bread because he gave the other half to Pochita. So keep in mind, the first thing he ever says that he wants is jam on his bread and to just hug a girl before he dies. And as he falls asleep, he fantasizes of a life where he can have bread with jam with Pochita, where he can flirt with a girl, play video games together, and fall asleep in her arms. Before he becomes Chainsaw Man, that's all he ever wanted. Only afterwards do his desires become more perverted and more desperate. And Denji himself almost figures this out when he realizes he doesn't feel things like he used to. That he was very sad when Pochita gave up his heart for him, but when he thinks about how he'd feel if Makima, the person he currently cares about the most, dies, he says he'd be upset for a couple days, but afterwards he'd be just fine. So at the very least, he knows that his emotions have died down, but it's exactly because of that that he doesn't bother to think what exactly that means. He has unfortunately become what all devils are, creatures of instinct. And what exactly is a teenage boy's greatest instinct? Obviously, sex. And it doesn't take Makima very long to realize exactly that.
好きな男のタイプとかあります？
デンジ君みたいな人。
She knows exactly what Denji is weak against, and she also knows that he doesn't have the sense to really realize it himself, at least not yet. And it's exactly because of that and how she uses him in that way that makes her actions throughout the story so incredibly evil. That said, Denji, as well as other devils, do have the capability to overcome their base instincts. The first example is, of course, Pochita, who willingly gives his heart to Denji, who is pretty much dead. This is, of course, a blessing and a curse. Arguably, with how Chainsaw Man proceeds, more of a curse, but he gave Denji a chance at life because he wanted to see his his dreams of a normal life come to fruition, which unfortunately no one really lets Denji try to realize his goals of a normal life because he's constantly manipulated at every turn. But more about devils for now. Devils feel the urge to kill people because it raises how feared they are, which in turn strengthens them. That's how their power works. So their base instincts are kill and make people afraid of you. And being half devil, Denji doesn't quite do that, but he definitely has a very apparent battle high that he gets. And the more he dies, which he can't die, but pretty much the more he dies throughout a fight, the more apparent the high he gets off of it is. And I definitely think that's very much because of the chainsaw heart that he has. I think that's a very big devil factor because you see a few devils that get very high off fighting. It's just it is a part of their greater base instincts. However, despite the fact that Denji experiences both human and devil instincts, like I said earlier, he has the capacity to think beyond that, and he does do that sometimes. You see more of his actual humanity shine through. It's not just the chainsaw heart that's there, he still does have a heart, he still has part of his humanity, but whenever he's about to make any kind of progress in regards to that, Makima always stunts it immediately by seducing him further and promising him more things if he does things for her. Even beyond Makima, women are always trying to manipulate Denji because of how apparent him being constantly horny is. And to an extent, he knows this. At least later on, he definitely figures it out. And he doesn't really care, which is the sad part. Because he knows he's being used, but he thinks that he'll get something out of it. With Makima, he thinks he has a chance at an actual relationship there. Even, like, at first he just wants to get laid, but later on he says that if he kills the gun devil, he just wants Makima to be his girlfriend. But he's still combining both of those concepts together, so he's still just horny about it. He really deludes himself into thinking Makima is a savior figure towards him. So yeah, he just wants to be with her in both ways. And, being with a girl was one of the dreams he always had. And Pochita, before he made the contract with Denji, told him that he always wanted to see Denji live out his dreams. So, that's Denji's goal, which is cruel to think about because Denji thinks what he's doing is leading towards all of his dreams coming true, even though he's only getting more and more manipulated and going down such a bad path. But because he thinks it's the right path, and because of Pochita's final wishes to Denji being that his wishes come true, it just pushes him further and further on it. But like I said, there are moments where hope for Denji, as well as other devils, shine through. So obviously, Pochita is the first example of a devil not just succumbing to their base instincts, but the next
おうおうひげ伏せ人間わしの名はパワーバディとやらはうぬか
is power. So, power. I love power. Like, in a way words cannot describe. I love this woman. But you're not here for my taste in women. Just know that power is just amazing to me. So before I go on a rant about how perfect she is, I'll get to the point. When power is first introduced, she's just a devil who happens to be able to be reasoned with, and she works for Makima too for some reason. And you soon find out that reason is because she had a cat. Her cat, named Meowie, which is adorable, is something she would risk even death for because she cares about him so much. And she never even meant to care for the cat. She just came across it one day and it was really skinny, so she decided to fatten it up before she would eat it. But in the process of, feeding it and in turn kind of raising it, she grew to care for Meowie and genuinely love the cat. And she even goes as far to try to kill Denji for the sake of her cat, which in turn would be betraying Makima, who she is visibly always nervous around. So she's very afraid of Makima and what not listening could do to her. But for her cat, she is willing to not listen, to betray Makima, just to save her cat. So power very clearly goes beyond what she instinctually felt the need to do, which is kill the cat, and grew to care for it and act in a way that benefits Meowie. So this is yet another example of a devil caring for another creature besides itself. And Power and Denji also grow to be very close to each other. You see the full extent of it in the manga, but like their dynamic is one of the best I've seen. They have such a wholesome relationship and they feel like such a deep yet non-romantic love for each other that it's really just a beautiful thing to see. And just such a great friend dynamic between the two. So, through power is one of the ways in which Denji experiences more emotional capacity than instinctual capacity. And seeing him, Power, and Aki, even in just the first season, just slowly start becoming closer to each other and, living together and having just their own little family dynamic is such a cute and wholesome thing that really shines through because of all the bad stuff happening around them. And of course, Power and Aki aren't the only examples of relationships that Denji cherishes. There's, of course, the Reze arc movie. So, more about Aki for a second is I love Aki. He's a really cool character. He's kind of the ideal version of the Sasuke stereotype where edgy, he just wants revenge kind of guy. But you really see a more apparent transformation with him, with how he starts to care for Power and Denji, despite hating them and hating the responsibility of taking care of them at first. But seeing him become like their older brother figure who takes care of them, even though they're always causing a ruckus, is just such a nice, wholesome thing to see. And Aki's also a really great tool to show off the power system because he has contracts with a few devils, and seeing him use them is always a really cool, and it's really interesting to see how he goes about it in a combat experience. And now I want to start talking about the movie, the Reze arc. So, the reason why Denji is even swayed by Reze in the first place is because while Makima always tries to, like, bargain with him, like, if you kill the gun devil, I'll do anything you want me to, right? But it's like there's a big condition for it. And Reze is just hanging out with him to hang out with him. Obviously, she has a hidden goal, but Denji doesn't know that. She's just always trying to get closer to him. And like Denji said, he likes people who likes him. Fair enough. But you can't really blame him for going after or being more swayed by the girl who's actually hanging out with him regularly. Like, yeah, he went on a date with Makima, and Makima's the one who told him that he definitely has a heart, but Reze's the one who really made him feel its presence, And Reze eventually opens up her heart to him. It's unlike the manipulation and seduction that is between Denji and Makima. Denji and Reze actually start to feel affection for each other. It goes both ways. And, despite everything that happens, you can't really blame Reze for her actions because just like Denji, she was being used. Not in the same way, obviously, but she didn't have a say in how her life went, just like Denji. And it makes it all the more tragic that how that situation played out because man, that was really Denji's best out that we've seen, even into the manga. Like that was the best possible point where Chainsaw Man could have ended, and the fact that it didn't, and that Denji is still going through it, is just so terrible. Because still true to the current point in time in the manga, every woman that Denji meets, like he says, tries to kill him, and they're all after his chainsaw heart. Reze did want Denji's heart at the end there. The real tragedy of Chainsaw Man is that everyone seems to be a slave to their circumstances. Obviously Denji is, and he's the most apparent case because everyone's just constantly trying to tie him down and use them for their own benefit. But every character seems to be as well. Like, Powers is pretty much a slave to the devil hunters, and she'll die if she doesn't listen to them. Aki is a slave to his past and wanting revenge. And a lot of the characters do have the vengeance thing going on, because I mean, like, why else would you become a devil hunter? But even Makima kind of was when you find out her story, but it doesn't justify anything she does by a long shot. Reze obviously was a slave to her circumstances, very much so. But, that's very true to life. Denji does grow to kind of hate himself for how susceptible he is and how he doesn't, or at least very much struggles to change. But it's really hard to blame him for anything that he does because he never had a parental figure in life. He had to raise himself, and all he ever had was Pochita. But he had to sell his organs regularly to try to pay off his monumental debt, and he risked life or death scenarios very often, just starting from a child. Not to mention, with his new heart, he has a hard time feeling things, so when he eventually does, it's often too late. Instincts, or perhaps temptations, bad habits, are hard for anyone to fight. Believe me, I've had and still do have quite a lot of bad habits, and I'm sure you do too. Everyone does. Perhaps that's why devils exist. They're a reflection of our own faults. But the fact that Denji, as well as other devils, can overcome what they are means that so can everyone else. Denji is by far and away one of the most tragic characters I've ever seen, but he's still trying. And that's what Chainsaw Man means to me. That even if you're stuck in a loop of your own mistakes, and even if it seems like you can never change for the better, there's still a way out. Whether it be through your own actions or through the help of other people, there's still a way. If Denji is still trying, if he's still going on, I know I have no excuse. Despite all the blood and gore and sexual manipulation that Denji is subjected to, he still finds people he truly cares for. He still finds wholesome moments in between all the chaos. And I hope you can too. Chainsaw Man is a true masterpiece. Its setting, its characters, it's truly something that you'll never quite find anywhere else. Tatsuki Fujimoto is such a talented author, and his stories tend to be tragic, so if you ever want to check any of his works out, just fair warning, they all pretty much tend to go in that direction. But I truly hope that Denji does have a happily ever after. Where he's at in the manga, there's a way out for him, but whether or not he gets the opportunity to take it is yet to be seen. But if he has a bad ending, bye Jesse, then I will truly be devastated beyond repair. I care way too much about Denji to not see him live happily ever after. In case you haven't guessed, I'm putting Chainsaw Man in God tier. Very easy choice for me. It's one of my favorites of all time. As for the other tier list, I think we all know that Makima is an easy F. Like, it's not even close. Reze, I'm going to put in S, and my queen, my goddess Power is going in God tier. And I know that's most people wouldn't put Power over Reze, understandably, if you haven't read the manga. But if you've read the manga, like it's an understandable decision. And Power's just more my type anyways. As for the last part of the tier list, I'm going to put Shinobu and Mitsuri down a tier because I like Power more than Reze, but I think Reze is better than Shinobu. So, yeah, just gonna change that real quick. And yeah, I think that's about it. My first video did a lot better than I thought it would. Got over 200 views. I was expecting like 10. And, I get that YouTube's just that saturated of a platform, so maybe it doesn't mean anything, but it meant something to me. So, thank you if you check that out, if you check this out, it means a lot. For my next video, I plan to do The Greatest Estate Developer, which is a manhwa. So, if you're not familiar with manhwa, they're Korean comics, and a lot of them are actually really good. So if you're not familiar with it, check my next video out. I'll try to do it justice. I hope I did Chainsaw Man at least a fraction of the justice it deserves. And, like or a comment would be nice. Like to see some interactions, some thoughts, opinions, criticisms even. And subscribing would mean the world to me. I know, like, this is just my second video, so I won't be surprised if no one subscribes. But if you do, thank you. And yeah, I'll see you next time. I'll try to get the Greatest Estate Developer video out later this week. And yeah, bye.